I'm Alex from NME, and today I'm joined by one of the country's most acclaimed filmmaking duos, a proper filmmaking duo. It's Alex Garland and Danny Boyle. How are we doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
I wanted to start by getting you in the headspace of when the last film came out. So I've got a picture here of a certain two filmmakers at Sundance 2003.
Oh,
So
God, yes.
Take a look at that.
No, I've absorbed.
Oh, that's it. I remember that T-shirt. I remember that.
I actually remember. I remember that. I just remember the whole thing. Yeah.
So, absorb that, and I want you to tell me a lesson each that you think you've learned in the intervening time about making movies.
The people don't want to come. Nothing will stop them.
That's very true.
It's a miracle that you make some things that you think are the best thing you've ever done, and nobody's interested. And you make something else, and suddenly you can't. So we made this. Yeah, I made this film, Slumdog Millionaire. You couldn't stop people coming to see it. It was just you could have tried to kind of stage atrocities outside cinemas, and then other ones you make with equal affection and love. We made this film together, Sunshine. So proud of the film. Nobody went to see it. Yeah. So it's a weird one. That one. That is something. I say that it's not a. It's a slightly crafty answer to avoid detail, but it is true.
It's true.
Actually.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
What about you?
So,
Alex?
well, this will embarrass Danny, but that's one of the good things about doing these interviews.
These duos.
The only reason.
But it is true. So 28 Days Later was the first film I ever worked on, and I learned a lot about filmmaking in a super accelerated way during the making of that film. Then more than 2 decades pass, work on a lot of films. Some of them I work on as a director as well as a writer, and so accumulate a whole bunch more knowledge. And I did learn, as one does, you never stop learning. It just never stops. There's a good phrase, here's a phrase, larger the searchlight, the larger the circumference of the unknown. So the more you learn, the more you understand that you don't know. That's absolutely true.
Have you got a list of those written down somewhere?
Yeah, we did. We just Googled them before you came in. But in this film, I would have thought in anticipation. In fact, I did think in anticipation. I had learned enough to be able to anticipate Danny in the way he would work and where certain decisions would lead. But actually, it was incredibly similar to the first experience, and there were things that in effect, in a good way, not in an alarming way, made no sense to me, that then made enormous sense later on. One of them you were just talking about, which is shooting in a way that bakes in a kind of unreliability and relying on the unreliability. It's pretty advanced to be able to do that, and so my thing is to do with being behind a gradient and discovering that I'm still, not 28 years later, but close, still behind the gradient. But that's a good thing. Like, it is a good thing, but it would be that.
Tell me about working with young fathers again. How do you brief someone to score the apocalypse?
You don't really. You send them the script, get them to read the script. You just don't know what's in people's minds when everybody reads scripts differently. Yeah. That's one of the extraordinary things about them. So you don't know whether you share even that, but you read the script together, and then you talk a bit. Then you send them some tunes, which you're using to edit the film. Just so that there's music we can talk about rather than ideas. You just talk about music, and then music is very difficult to talk about, but it communicates.
What tunes did you send them?
Oh, the whole, John Harris, the editor, and I, we have loads of tunes that we just, and then we try out different things, and some of them are silly, and some of them are, and then they just begin to send you stuff back, and then you begin this dialogue, which is not spoken, but is using music backward and forward like that. You send them bits back with their music on, and they develop it, and they wrote. I mean, as you'd expect, if you know their music, they're fantastic. They're kind of like the Beach Boys, but on steroids or hardcore, but they use vocal harmonies and vocal expression as well as these beats. And I thought, what a wonderful idea of giving them this horror film and see what they make of it. And lots of it is, if you're a Young Fathers fan, you'd say, yeah, that's them. But they wrote this tune for the scene at the big scene at the Bone Temple with Isla. They wrote this tune called Remember that will surprise people. Very beautiful bit of writing. It's like
It's so good,
Yeah, they're I love them. They're a real inspiration, and they come from the same estates that Trainspotting drew its original characters from. Some pretty tough places in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So it was good, and they work in a dump. They won't mind me saying that. I went up to see them. They're in this, literally, it's not even a garage. It's a shed, basically, that they all cram into. And they have one kettle, and you kind of have to wear a coat because there's not much by the way of heating, and it's in Edinburgh in the winter. Anyway, but they're worth it, always. Yeah. They don't even do biscuits. I had to bring the biscuits. I don't have biscuits. Anyway.
There's no discharge in the war.
And at the moment at Enemy HQ, we're all like, the main thing we're talking about, I think you can probably guess, is the Oasis reunion next month in July. And
it's very soon.
Yeah, Danny, you recently exec produced Creation Stories.
Oh yeah.
Alan McGee, who obviously signed Oasis first. So I thought, are you going to take Alex and sneak into one of those shows next month, maybe?
I'm away next month.
Just so you don't have to answer that question. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Are they playing Heaton Park?
Oh, they definitely are.
Oh, yeah. I think they'll be playing Heaton Park.
There's stories
I remember going to see the Pope in Heaton Park on his visit to Britain. That's my and I used to play there when I was a kid in Heaton Park, so it's got lots of memories lined up in it.
Did you say the Pope?
Yeah, the Pope came to Heaton Park in Manchester.
Oh, what?
He visited Heaton Park.
You've got to keep that in.
Yeah, this will all be in.
I thought you meant as in the Pulp. As
Anyway,
in John
listen.
Stocker.
All I hope is that
More Britpop. I see.
All I hope is that they play Hindu Times, because that's the greatest, for me, that's one of the great 5 guitar riffs of all time.
Yeah. Well, Noel Gallagher famously in an interview said that he was Oasis were the only Britpop band that you didn't get on the Trainspotting soundtrack.
I know. I know. But we did it. This is an example where we started talking about films that nobody wants to see. Everybody wanted to see Trainspotting, which Oasis weren't featured in. Nobody went to see Life Less Ordinary, which featured Ewan McGregor singing Round Our Way by Oasis. So there you go.
Yes.
Hard justice.
My final question, we always ask this, is there an album that you always go back to? You have to pick one.
London Calling.
Why that one?
Clash. Oh. They were it for me, just in terms of punk, not just as energy, but as what you could do with it, in terms of ambition. It wasn't just an energy and an attitude, it was an ambition beyond that as well. Yeah. So that's it for me.
What about you, Alex?
It's a compilation album from some point in the 90s. It was like a Japanese import of Can, of just random Can tracks.
Oh, the Germans, yeah.
Yeah, I was a big Can fan. I sort of discovered them in the 80s on cassette, on like sort of bootleg or whatever you call it.
I bet Can would be great to get in a movie.
I have a couple of times put a Can track in and then had to take it out for one reason or another. But yeah, big fan.
I've been watching all of your films together to research this film for this interview.
Both of them.
Well, I count The Beach as well because yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because without you, that wouldn't exist. So, what's your favourite music moment in a film that you've worked together?
Oh, mine is our first one. The very first track is Godspeed You, Black Emperor, at the beginning of 28 Days Later. I remember because we shot the opening sequence a couple of months before we did the rest of the film, and we put it together and put that soundtrack, that track on it, and you just thought, it's very rarely that you feel, oh God, that works. That works. I don't care what anybody says about it, it works. Very rarely you feel that. And so we've used it at the end of 28 years later in a sort of homage to that moment. That'd be it for me.
I'd say the same. And I don't know if you remember this, because sometimes people remember things in different ways, but I thought I heard you in an interview talking about trying stuff out and coming across Godspeed 428, but for what it's worth, you had them in mind while we were in the development stage, because you said you've got to listen to this band for this.
Did I?
You did, and I bought the one Lift Your Skinny Fist to Heaven. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that track isn't on that one. It's on the one before Fuck.
Right.
It's called FU. It's all asterisks.
It's had a sort of like brown paper cover, it looked like.
Yeah, Lift Your Skinny Fist to Heaven.
And so I used to listen to that while I was doing rewrites.
Did you?
Yeah. So you had it in your mind which is usually not the case with films, because you usually discover the needle drops while you're working on it.
Best usually when you're
Yeah,
working on it.
yeah.
Yeah. But that was there. Yeah, that was a landscape. It was quite hard to get them for
really?
the original film. Yeah, because they distrusted, understandably, Rupert Murdoch and the fact that it was Fox and all this kind of stuff. And they eventually agreed. I remember going up to
You flew somewhere.
we
didn't
went.
you?
Andrew and I went up to Newcastle to kind of watch them in concert, and then we went out for dinner with them afterwards, I think. And they were like wary as anything about us. But then they saw the film, or the bit of the film we were going to put it on, and they reluctantly agreed. They didn't want it on the soundtrack because that was they didn't want to kind of let people accessing their music through Fox.
Were they not aware of you and any of the films you
At that time,
Yeah.
they probably were, but they were wary. But then when we approached them on this one, it came back like instantly. So I thought, oh, we did all right. They obviously were okay.
They
so
appreciated sort of the uptick in their sales after that.
probably, yeah. Anyway, they're worth it. They're a very, excellent band. Yeah.
I could listen to you guys talk about music forever, but I've got to stop there. But thanks so much for chatting to us.
Okay,
Thank
cool.
you.
No!